All right, Jody, here we are at the second stage. So we've completed the boarding, and it looks like you're applying some sort of gray sealant. Again, can you help our viewers understand what you're doing here and why?
Yes, Paul. What we have to do here now, this is 545 gray primer sealer. And this is the first step of the primers.
Okay.
And we want to seal the whole project here.
All right.
Before we move on.
Okay, all right. Now, a professional that's doing a job like this, are they keeping a couple things specifically in mind? Are there some real things they have to focus on to do a good job in this area?
The critical is cure time.
Okay.
Cure time is the biggest factor here, and it's part of the process, and you really have to follow this.
Okay, all right. Here's the shot of the next part in this sequence or this process, and it looks like you've painted the hull white now.
Yes, Paul. This is a high build epoxy primer. And you can spray this up to like 25 mils thick.
Yeah. Now, why would you do that? Why are we painting the white over the gray?
Well, the gray was just a sealer.
Okay.
This is a high build primer, so now we're trying to fill in all the low areas that we showed up with the airboard.
Okay, all right. And again, with this part of the process, is there anything unique about it that, again, the professional might keep their eye on when they're focusing on this particular part?
The curing process is critical, once again, even more so because it's thicker.
Really?
You're doing 25 mils. It could take up 24, 36 hours, and you have to check it as you go along.
Okay. How thick is 25 mils?
It's about 1/8 of an inch.
1/8 of an inch. Okay. All right. So we're building it up. All right. Okay. Well, Jody, this is the fourth step, and I think you referred to it as ghosting. We'd put that gray sealant down. We had put the white on, and now you're spraying it with gray again. What's going on here?
Well, Paul, ghosting is a little trick, and you use gray 545, and you just dust the white with it. And when you sand it, it'll show all your low spots.
Interesting. Okay. And we've got one more shot of that too, I think, from the other side of the boat. Again, I guess the viewer hopefully could see that maybe they could see the white and then the light gray coat just on top of it.
It's just the dusting to show you all the low spots when you begin sanding.
Now this is what you're talking about in terms of the sanding. Now you're using an air file, right?
Yes, Paul.
Yeah. And what's going on here?
Well, what you want to do here, Paul, is you want to sand in an X dimension throughout the hull, and that will feather the hull, and it also will show all the low spots.
Now this looks like you've sprayed it with the gray again. Is this the final sealing part of the process?
Yes, this is 545 primer sealer, and what you do is you dust it first of all as like a tack coat.
Okay.
And then you put a final coat on, and it'll dry like a velvet look.
Really? Boy, that's interesting. I think we might have one more picture of it. Yep, that's the side picture of it. Now again, we've talked before about what a professional would be keeping in his or her mind as they do this process. Is cure time another critical factor? Is there anything else that they're balancing their head to make this come out correct?
A cure time on this is critical because if you go too long, you have to sand the primer for the top coat.
Oh, okay.
And if you go too early, the top coat bites into it.
So it's a delicate balance.
Yes, there is.
Okay, all right. Now this is showing the top coat, because this was a blue. It looks almost like a flag blue.
Yes, it is, Paul. Flag blue.
Yeah. How does this work? So we've got that gray on, and then does this take multiple coats as well?
Yes, it does, Paul. A tack coat first of all, and then you wait about 45 minutes, and then you put one full coat on, and then you wait about 2 hours, and then you put another full coat on.
All right. Now, is the environment critical when you're doing this? I mean, in terms of humidity and temperature and things like that?
Very much so. All grip dries slowly, so you have to have a dust-free environment, a controlled environment.
Okay, all right. Now, this shot shows the top coat on the transom. Can that cause issues? I was thinking you've got some different angles there. Is that tricky when you're doing this process as opposed to just spraying the hull? Those corners and angles, does that represent a challenge for professionals?
You really have to get a flow, and it takes years to develop a nice, even flow.
Yes, yes, I believe that. And then I think we've got one more shot of it, Jody, here. This is the hull shot, and again, I guess curing and cure times critical.
Yes, this has to cure for 2 to 3 days.
Does it really?
Before you can touch it.
Okay, all right. Now, how about this? You look like you're maybe relaxing here, Jody. You're doing something with it around the boot stripe down there. What's going on down there?
The boot stripe is going over a spray rail, and it's a tapered boot stripe. And this, believe it or not, this is one of the hardest processes to do.
Is it really?
This took a whole day to lay out this boot stripe.
Jeez, that's quite a project there. Well, I think we've got one more shot in that area. Let's look. Oh, it looks like that process has been completed.
It looks very nice. It came out nice after all that work.
That did come out nice. So at this point, we've done all the fairing of the hull, and we've got the top coat on, and we've got the stripes on. So it's really kind of looking pretty sharp here. And then the next step, which is kind of an interesting one, looks like you sanded it all off.
Now we're prepping for the clear coat.
Okay. All right.
So what we're doing here is you sand all the flag blue down.
You do, okay.
And then you sand the white down also.
All right.
But you have to be really careful not to smudge the white with the blue sanding dust.
Okay, all right. And because we're going to put some clear on top of this, and if you don't have everything into its separate corners, if you will, you're going to clear coat the smudges, if you will.
In this process, Paul, you have to clean the hull 2 to 3 times before you're ready for a clear coat.
Really? Really? So you got to be very careful, very careful. Let's see, I think we've got, there's another picture of the sanding, and of course there's the hard chine or the strake coming up towards the bow. Again, a very labor-intensive process, and one that takes a considerable amount of care, doesn't it?
Yes, Paul, you have to be very careful at this step.
Okay. Well, let's look at the next step here. This is after the clear coat has been applied. Now, how many coats of clear coat do you typically put on as part of this process, Jody?
We like to put 3 coats of clear. 3
coats. Okay. And does that have to cure for a certain length of time?
Yes, it's constantly curing for weeks on end, but it's dust-free in 24 hours. 24 hours. Okay. Well, that's a beautiful reflection, and we can see it right there in the hull. Let's see. We've got a couple more pictures here. There's a picture of the boat from kind of from the bow angle. And then I think we've got a shot here where they're getting ready to move it. Now the guy back there in the corner looks like he's taking a lot of care on this, and it's kind of unusual. You don't see any straps or anything else that's touching the hull. Is it important to keep things away from the hull in the early part after you finish? Yes, Paul. The job is so fresh that you need to let it cure, and so no lifting straps and no tie downs. That's critical right here. It's going to take a good week to get this really hard. Really? Okay.
And then I think we've got one more shot, and again, I think the camera probably can pick it up pretty well. The reflection is really amazing on this. Just a whole different spectrum from the original chalking that we had.
Yes, the depth here with all grip, you get the extreme depth. It really looks nice.
Jody, you know, we've just looked at the process and the different steps involved in the process. Now, even when you have a professional involved, are there certain areas in which even pros doing this can run up against?
Yes, Paul. The most common results are when a pro rushes the job and they don't respect the cure times. Okay. You know, and why the refinishing job looks good for about 6 months, you'll start seeing dullness and image quality problems.
All right, all right. So even for a pro, this is not a cakewalk. You got to really.
If you rush the process, you'll see it within 6 to 8 months.
See the results. Well, the results can be great, as we saw in those photographs. And oftentimes with things in life that are great, they're not inexpensive. So that might be something that's on someone's mind if they're watching this program. You know, what sort of expense might they be looking at to have their boat coated with a polyurethane paint? Can you share with us a little bit about what we're looking at in that area?
Yes, Paul. I'm not going to kid you. It's not cheap. But you know, it all depends on the condition of your boat. You know, if it has cracks or voids or old paint. But a good rule of thumb is about $200 a foot. Okay, about 200 a foot. Okay, and still, you know, that on one hand that sounds expensive, on the other hand, when you compare it to the purchase of a new boat, which can be $100,000 or $200,000, that can be a very good investment. Yes, Paul. I mean, if it's done right, it's an excellent investment.
Yes.
And it's cheap compared to a new boat.
Right. So let's say, again, someone's watching the program, they say, geez, I really have a better understanding of what I could do to bring my boat up to the condition I'd like it to be in, and I'm ready to address the price issue. That seems like a good investment for me. I like my boat, I want to keep my boat, I want to get it refurbished. So now they start thinking about finding a professional in their area that might be able to help them. What sort of questions do you think they would be smart to ask to narrow down those professionals that they're considering to do a job like this?
The questions I'd suggest is, how long have you been refinishing boats?
Okay.
And basically the proper answer would be at least 10 years.
At least 10 years, okay.
And then it would be, you know, what products do you use? Do you use a system?
Okay.
And how does the system work?
Okay.
Make the professional explain it to you.
Okay, all right.
And, you know, where can they view boats that have been sprayed, you know, over 5 years old, so you can see how they held up?
Okay. Yeah, because we were talking earlier about it may look good for a short period of time, but then over time you see it deteriorating.
Definitely.
Yeah. How about other boat owners? Do you ever suggest they talk to other people who've had jobs
Yes,
done?
other boat owners, recommendations, marine professionals that you trust.
Yeah.
And that's always a good way to go.
Yeah, that's excellent. Jody, we've really, I think, had a really interesting show today. You know, a lot of boat owners, whether they own relatively new boats or older boats, are experiencing this common problem of their hulls fading and chalking. And as you explained, from your experience, there's 5 root causes. And the importance of that is that they can't just take a buffing machine out and address it over the long term. That's a short-term fix.
Yes.
And so they really have 2 roads to go: re-gel coat or a polyurethane paint, right?
Right.
And then there's a process involved to a polyurethane paint that doesn't lend itself readily to a do-it-yourselfer, does it?
Right, Paul.
You got to be very careful. You talked about cure times. You talked about special tools.
Controlled environments.
Controlled environments, yeah. So if all that stuff comes together in the hands of a professional, the results can be fantastic, as we saw.
Yes, it can.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrapped up the show for today?
Well, Paul, thanks for having me on your show. I've been around the boat business and the repair business for over 30 years. And it was a nice thing to show your viewers an overview of a restoration job.
Yes.
And people have to keep in mind that this is just a small piece. There's a lot of things behind the scenes.
Okay.
And there's a lot of other processes, but we try to give them a quick overview.
Yep.
You know, so still the key is to seek out your professional.
Okay.
And feel comfortable with them.
Yes.
And if your viewers would like to check us out, you can check us out at wilcomarinerestorations.com.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Paul.
And I want to thank our Smart Boating viewers for joining us for this session. They can check out other clips. You can check out other clips of the show at www.smartboatingus.com. And I hope you'll come back again real soon to join us for another session of Smart Boating.